They tried resuscitating him, taken to a hospital where he was pronounced dead.
On July 24th, the world was caught off guard by the sudden news of Hulk Hogan's death, but now things have taken an even stranger turn. Newly leaked recordings have surfaced showing Hogan's final moments at home, and they are raising serious questions about whether his death was as natural as first believed in the digital age, where every moment can become viral within seconds. Few videos have captured the collective heartbreak of millions, quite like the footage that appeared on July 24th, 2025. The leaked video shows Hulk Hogan being rushed from his Clearwater, Florida home on a stretcher, while paramedics desperately perform CPR. This haunting scene, which quickly spread across social media, has become the last visual record of Terry Jean Bollia's earthly journey. What makes these final recordings especially moving is how sharply they contrast with the vibrant and charismatic persona Hogan displayed just weeks before his passing. The man who once dominated wrestling rings around the world, becoming more than a sports entertainer but a true cultural icon, was reduced to those final desperate moments captured on a neighbor's phone camera. Hulk Hogan passed away on July 24, 2025 at the age of 71 following cardiac arrest. The wrestling world and millions of fans across the globe mourned the loss of a legend who transcended sports entertainment to become a household name recognized everywhere. Yet the leaked footage of his final moments added a layer of tragic reality to an almost mythical life. In the weeks before his death, Hogan remained active, giving interviews and making public appearances. His last major interview was with Theo Vaughn on the podcast this past weekend, a conversation that now holds deep significance as we reflect on his final thoughts and memories. In that discussion, we saw a man who, despite his legendary status, remained humble, reflective, and grateful for his journey from a struggling musician in Tampa, Florida, to one of the most recognizable figures in entertainment history.
I don't mean to be an egomaniac, but I could actually wrestle anybody at that time. Sell out. Sold out everyone constantly.
During this final extended interview, Hogan displayed the same charismatic storytelling ability that had captivated audiences for decades. He spoke candidly about his relationship with fellow wrestling legend Ric Flair, painting vivid pictures of their adventures and misadventures together. The stories he told revealed not just the larger-than-life personas these men portrayed, but also the very human friendships and rivalries that existed behind the scenes. One particularly touching moment came when Hogan reflected on Flair's serious health crisis, showing the deep bond that existed between these warriors of the squared circle.
I walked into Dr. Hogan's body, his blood was destroyed, his body inside. Something doesn't.
The interview revealed a man who had learned to compartmentalize his pain, both physical and emotional. When discussing his numerous surgeries and health challenges, Hogan spoke with a calm acceptance that masked the true severity of his condition.
10 or 12 years, had about 25 surgeries.
This physical decline was not a recent development. Throughout his final interviews, Hogan often spoke about the toll that decades of professional wrestling had taken on his body. He had undergone multiple back surgeries, knee and hip replacements, and numerous other procedures that left him far removed from his peak physical condition. In the months leading up to his passing, Hogan faced additional health challenges, including a neck procedure in May 2025. The stark contrast between the articulate, thoughtful man seen in these final interviews and the desperate medical emergency captured in the leaked footage serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly life can change. The same voice that had entertained millions with stories of his wrestling adventures and business ventures would soon be silenced forever, leaving only these recorded conversations as his final testament. Perhaps most poignantly, in his last television appearance promoting his Real American Beer, Hogan appeared noticeably smaller and more fragile than the imposing figure fans remembered from his heyday.
The only beer company that lives here, and there was an open lane that somebody dropped the ball on marketing, not naming the names, and so we just started, and we came up with the name of Real American Beer way before
This brief interview, which would become one of his final public statements, showed a man still engaging with fans and promoting his business ventures, seemingly unaware that his time was nearing its end. The interviews from his final months revealed someone who had made peace with his legacy. Even as he continued to battle the physical consequences of his long career, he spoke openly about his faith, his family, and his ongoing ventures with an optimism that made his sudden passing all the more shocking to those who knew him. And one of his last major podcast appearances with Patrick Bet David Hogan delivered what many now regard as his most profound and personal interview. In it, he spoke candidly about topics he had rarely addressed publicly, including his relationship with his father and the moment that transformed his understanding of life and death. The recording of his father's final moments, which Hogan shared during this conversation, offered a glimpse into the spiritual journey that defined his later years.
So his chest, and I went, ah!
This experience profoundly shaped Hogan's worldview and gave him a perspective on mortality that would later seem eerily prescient. His description of feeling his father's spirit leave his body convinced him that life extended beyond the physical realm, a belief that appeared to comfort him in his final days. The contrast between these reflective final interviews and the leaked footage of his last moments creates a complex narrative about celebrity, privacy, and mortality in the digital age. While the recordings of his conversations are remembered for their honesty and depth, the leaked video of his medical emergency raises unsettling questions about society's relationship with death and privacy. Throughout these final interviews, Hogan continued to display the same qualities that had endeared him to millions: his authenticity, his openness, and his ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Whether discussing his business ventures, health struggles, or spiritual journey, he maintained the genuine warmth that defined his public persona. Those last recordings captured a man who had found peace with both his triumphs and his failures, leaving behind a legacy that would outlast his physical presence. To truly understand the impact of Hulk Hogan's death, we must return to the crucible where legends are forged, the wrestling territories of the 1970s, and the revolutionary vision that would transform not only one man's career but an entire industry. The story of how Terry Bollea became Hulk Hogan is far more complex and compelling than the simple tale of good triumphing over evil that he portrayed in the ring. The wrestling business of the 1970s was a harsh territorial battleground where respect was earned through blood, sweat, and relentless perseverance. When young Terry Bollea first entered a wrestling training facility, he stepped into a world that made today's WWE Performance Center seem tame by comparison. On his very first day, the established wrestlers deliberately broke his leg and told him never to return. This was not hazing, it was a test of character meant to separate the dreamers from those with the resilience to survive in wrestling's unforgiving landscape. What happened next revealed the determination that would one day captivate millions. Instead of retreating to the safety of his previous life as a musician, Hogan returned months later with a renewed sense of purpose and resolve. His father's words had struck deep, and from that moment on, the man who would become Hulk Hogan began forging the legend that would define professional wrestling for generations.
It straightened right up. So a few months later, when my leg was healed, I went back and had that attitude. I was young, but I was strong.
The wrestling territories of that era operated like feudal kingdoms, each governed by its own unwritten rules and codes of conduct. The business was so divided that crossing the invisible boundaries between promotions was considered a serious offense. Wrestlers who violated these lines often faced harsh consequences, ranging from being blackballed to suffering physical retribution. It was in this unforgiving environment that Hogan learned not only how to wrestle but how to survive in a business that devoured those who couldn't adapt. His early years were defined by constant struggle and rejection. Wrestling under various names, including Sterling Golden and Terry Boulder, he moved from territory to territory, often quitting when the physical punishment became unbearable and the pay barely enough to survive.
12, 13 pounds a week, and they're getting checked for $125.
Oh yeah, when you're beating somebody at a Best West.
Yeah, giggling head to the bottom.
The pay was so poor that Hogan often returned to his job as a longshoreman in Tampa, where he could earn $400 a day loading ships. He was reportedly the first white longshoreman in the Tampa Union, working primarily alongside Latino and Black colleagues. This experience gave him a deeper understanding of hard work, loyalty, and respect, lessons that would later serve him well in the wrestling world. His breakthrough came when he realized that wrestling was not merely about athletic competition, but about forging emotional connections with the audience. Then I figured the business out, right?
I figured the business out, right. Then I went back. One time I slammed somebody with the crowd. Like that, and the reaction got more response than the body.
Yeah.
Hit somebody in the throat. But the reaction got more. I said, okay, now I got it. It took me a while to figure it out.
This realization became the foundation for everything that followed. While other wrestlers focused on technical mastery, Hogan understood that the true measure of success lay in the crowd's reaction. He developed an instinctive ability to read an audience, knowing precisely when to play the hero and when to step into the role of the villain. His international experience, particularly in Japan, added new depth to his persona. Hogan spent considerable time wrestling for New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he was known as Ichiban, meaning number one. The Japanese wrestling scene was far more physical and demanding than its American counterpart, forcing him to refine his craft, adapt his approach, and strengthen both his body and his resolve.
As soon as I walked in, I was over.
What was the fanhood like, and how they treat fans different in America and Japan?
Well, over in Japan, they treat you like you're royal. It's just like Brad Pitt, Tom Brady, all of them.